How do I make better choices in choosing my partner? How do I make better choices in conveying what my needs are? How do I make better choices in doing things for me? What are the things that might help me feel fulfilled in myself and in my life?
Welcome to the It Gets Better From Here podcast. And this week, I'm so excited to introduce our guest. She is the amazing Laurel Kassor, an esteemed astrologer and cosmic coach, here to help us unlock the secrets of the universe and harness their power in our own lives. Join us as we journey through the cosmos, discovering how astrology can empower divorced women and single moms to navigate life's challenges with clarity and confidence. And without further ado, welcome to the show, Laurel. Thank you so much for being here.
Cheryl, thank you so much for having me. It is such a gift and a privilege and an honor to be present with you on your podcast. I'm so excited. Thank you.
Thank you. And just for our listeners, audience, and amazing community who might not know, but Laurel is actually my business coach. And she has been guiding me on the what, the how, on launching my workshop, launching my signature program. And she's really been instrumental in my journey. Shout out to EAA. I love them. Ask me more questions later. But back to Laurel. I've always been such a geek when it comes to metaphysics and, just all of that realm of higher power. There's the divine, and it's always called to me and I've been drawn to it since I could remember. And so that's why I was so excited to collaborate with you and have you as a guest here on the show. And so that way you can just tell us what to look out for or what's happening currently, because I've really used astrology so much in my life. And I'd like to ask you, Laurel, how do you become an astrologer? What was your journey like leading up to this point? Is that a gift that we all have, or how does that work? For you, how did your journey start?
Oh, what a good question. What a tale to reminisce upon. So while I do absolutely 1,000,000% believe that we all have the capacity to learn and harness astrology, there are certain natural talents that make it a little bit easier to pick up on some of this energy. And some of that lies in the energy of the individual themselves. So I'm not going to go too crazy jargon heavy there, but the sign of Aquarius is known to be a big picture thinker, really adept at picking up on pattern recognition and perception and looking at the world differently. And so astrology is actually considered to be an Aquarius science because the whole system, the whole study is pattern recognition. It's being able to look at a microscopic detail and zooming out to see how it fits into the larger picture of things and take a holistic view. And that is something that aligns with Aquarian energy, which I have a bunch of in my chart. I have my moon is there, my Saturn is there. It's a very important part of my life. But again, all of us can learn to observe these patterns. And one of the things that I most love about astrology, before I jump into my journey of how I got there with it, is the fact that it really is this way to view and engage with your reality actively. It's a beautiful way to step back outside of yourself from an unbiased standpoint and objectively see what the heck's going on. Why am I reacting this way? What is motivating me? What is driving me? What are the conditions that I'm under? What are the lessons that I'm learning? It's essentially, I like to call astrology the coding, essentially. If you are familiar with any kind of computer programming, I'm a little bit of a gamer myself. So to me, it's astrology is the code for how all this stuff works. And once you start to understand how to, finger quotes here, read the code, you can start to modify the experience that you're having. You can start to kind of go in and edit a little bit. And you do that in a conjunction with your awareness. It's not about forcing your will upon the energy. It's about moving in tandem with it.
Wow, that's so beautiful. I love that. And there's just, light bulbs happening as you're talking, because I'm literally visualizing all of these different moving parts and the words that you're saying. And shout out to my fellow Aquarians. Holla.
Yeah.
You know what? Yes. And I read that Aquarius is the most intelligent zodiac sign. Is that correct? I don't know. That's what I read.
So new astrology gets super nuanced super quickly. Bold statements like that or declarative statements like Aquarius is the most intelligent, I kind of stay away from. What I will definitely say is that Aquarius energy is among the most values intelligence.
I like that.
Like it's a little, yeah, right. The thing about astrology is that it's not about getting stuck inside of the boxes, right? It's so much more than like Tauruses are lazy, right? That's bullshit. Tauruses can get the most done if they move to do so. It's not about being boxed in. It's about understanding the precepts, understanding the conditions, understanding the motives and the drives of each energy, which are archetypes. I'll talk about that in a little bit here as we go into like what the hell is astrology actually. But it's really, to me, about going about this study, this pursuit with a growth mindset. Energy is inherently neutral. I firmly believe energy is inherently neutral. We as humans cast judgments upon what is desirable or undesirable, but energy just does what the heck it's going to do. And when we can understand the innate drives, motivations, needs that are being depicted by the astrological archetypes, by the signs, by the planets, by the movements of them, then it gives us a much firmer in on how we want to engage with the energy. So yes, Aquarians do tend to be a little brainier as on the whole, but that's because that energy values information, it values awareness, it values insight, it values perspective, because that's what drives it and that's what motivates it. So while I hesitate to say Aquarius is always going to be like the most intelligent, I will never miss a beat on saying that Aquarius will pursue the mastery of their knowledge, that they will go in really hard, gain the depth of insight that they wish to gain.
I love what you said about that. And I love that approach too, Laurel, because here's the thing. When I first read it, I was like, oh yeah, hey, I'm Aquarius. And then when I said it out loud, automatically my feeling and intuition is like, wait a second, that sounds kind of elitist. There's a lot of smart signs out there. And I'm surrounded by a lot of smart signs. And so, to say that out loud versus just reading it, I'm like, oh, that's freaking cool. I love your approach, which is why I'm going to drop this here right now. I have asked Laurel to be our in-house cosmic update astrologer, cosmic coach. So just, get familiar with her. I'm going to drop all of her info in the show links, but she is going to have repeat appearances monthly. And she's going to just, give us a heads up on how we can work with the energies, how we can work with what's happening. And we don't necessarily have to guess because we're part of this ecosystem, the universe. And if you don't believe in a higher power, a higher being, how are you even breathing? How is your body and the cells doing what it does just without you having to interfere?
100%. One of my favorite ways that I've ever heard, there are a lot of words for this big concept we're talking about right now. It's the universal consciousness. I like to refer to it as it's source, it's God, it's divine this, divine that. I think Joe Dispenza said it really well when he said that it is the innate intelligence. That's how our bodies know how to do what they do. That's how this earth is even functioning, because it's a miracle. I mean, if you stop and you just take a beat and you look outside at trees, you're like, this exists. Can you believe that this exists here? What are the odds, the miracle that there is life here? And so to me, it's some kind of divine intelligence. And I really feel like astrology is a language for understanding and interpreting the storylines of this innate intelligence. And when we use astrology practically, which I'm the biggest advocate of practical astrology, I'm a pretty woo-woo person myself, but there is something very like rational, reasonable, logical that we can use and apply this to our lives, whether or not we understand exactly how does Pluto influence us from a like mechanical, technical level of it, like irrelevant to me. There's information in the patterns, there's information in the data. And when we learn how to suss out and sort through and decipher what the messages are in our lived experiences, that's when the real magic happens. Because I think a lot of people get hung up on this idea of fate versus free will. And I get it, right? Like that's a big topic. That's a big question. And when I run into, which I honestly am so happy to say I really don't run into astro naysayers nearly as much as I used to. When I was first learning, there were a lot of people who were very eager to cut me down in my pursuit because they didn't believe it was valuable. They thought it was fake. They thought it was stupid. And I'd be sitting there with my Aquarius moon and they'd be telling me how dumb I was for like wasting my time in astrology. And I'm like, you don't even understand the level of actual intelligence it takes to hold 10 different planets across 12 different signs, across 12 different houses, with 6 potentially different aspects going on all at once, and distill a digestible piece of information to somebody else from that. Now, it doesn't have to be all that complicated. That's why we work with professional astrologers who can do all the computing for us. But one of the big arguments people would pull out on me was like, well, what about free will? There's no autonomy. And it's like, no, honey, listen. Honey, Linda, listen to me. There is so much free will in astrology. Again, going back to this idea of the source coding, that astrology just represents kind of like what the characters will do when left to their own devices. They'll just follow their map, essentially. We get to kind of take the reins and take control and make our own choices and movements within the landscape of the energy we find ourselves in. You know, it's like we use our free will to determine how are we going to show up to this energy? How are we going to show up to our thoughts? How are we going to show up to our experiences? How are we going to show up to our relationships, to our feelings, to our perceptions, all of it? Like that is in our wheelhouse. We have the freedom to choose. How am I going to think about what is going on right now? And we use that within the greater source coding that astrology provides. You know, it's like we get these different energetic bubbles that we find ourselves in. And then it's up to us to be like, okay, something tough is going on. Do I want to sit here and shame myself? Do I want to sit here and guilt myself? Do I want to sit here and succumb to my own like shortcomings here, the ones that I am in control of? Or do I want to dig deeper? Do I want to understand the nuances of what's really going on here? Do I want to see if there's an opportunity or a lesson, even if it's a tough one, inside of this bubble we might find ourselves in? And that is us enacting our free will. Thus, we have a little more say, almost. It's not like quite say, but we have a little more autonomy in the way we're going to experience the energy. Because one of the biggest tenets of astrology is as within, so without. You know, the whole statement is actually as above, so below, as within, so without. Everything that we experience on the external level is a mirror back to how well adjusted, integrated, assimilated we are with the energy that's happening within us. You know, and I think that that's a really beautiful and powerful framework, not just for astrology and how to use it, but like for so many different aspects of our lives. And sometimes it's a bummer because sometimes like you might look outside your life and be like, I'm going through a divorce. You know, I'm a single mom. This is hard. This is really fucking hard. Don't tell me, Laurel, that this is a reflection of me inside, that these circumstances are because I haven't dealt with something within. And sometimes that's a tough like pill to swallow. And I'm not like victim blaming or anything like that. I don't want it to sound like that, but it is this opportunity when we have these external challenges to recognize that there's an internal challenge that is seeking resolution. And it is through the vehicle that we experience the external reality that we are also able to repair, heal, purify, cleanse, evolve our internal reality. And then once we start to do that work, it's kind of wild how quickly the external will start to reflect the growth.
I love everything that you said. It's so true. It's so insightful. And for myself and even our listeners who believe and have worked with astrology, astrologers, that it is truly a part of life. And
Mm-hmm.
so you can either learn to leverage it to your advantage, which is to work with it, or you can
Mm-hmm.
be those people who thought Laurel was crazy. But in fact, consciousness is shifting and the veil
Yes.
is thinning, which is why even, like in our movies today, they are like now introducing concepts like the metaverse and, parallel
Mm-hmm.
realities, because astrophysicists, physics, it now is seeing that because energy cannot be destroyed, it can only be transmuted. Then, like there are different lifetimes, not lifetimes, but like lifelines that you can tap into
Mm-hmm.
because it's all there. And so I love the It Gets Better From Here podcast, because we talk about so many things. We talk about the real stuff in real life. We also talk about like the divine intelligence, spirituality, spiritual wisdom, because that is truly where we came from and we evolved. We can't possibly be so arrogant to think that, oh, one, you know what? We're just being human beings here. And yeah, we're making all this shit happen. Really? Have you taken a look at the like ancient Sumerian texts? Have you taken a look at the natural wonders of the world? How the hell did they, like build what they built way back in the day with no tools? And the systems are
Mm-hmm.
perfect, like the pyramids and like the crazy
Mm-hmm.
things that's inside the mazes, and like just the preservation of the mummies, and just, I mean, come on, guys. Like, please, this is why, like, I challenge you to think outside of the box, think outside of the programming, think for yourself, because it's time to wake up. Like, Laurel can touch on this. We are at the age of Aquarius, and
Mm-hmm.
consciousness is shifting. Back to the movies. That's why they're now introducing this, because we are evolving, we are waking up. And I love having my spiritual people here. You can call it
Mm-hmm.
woo woo or whatever, but the truth is that there is something bigger than us. And people are waking up to it. That's why I'm so honored and happy to have Laurel on a consistent monthly basis here, on our show, so that she can definitely enlighten us with her gifts, because like these celestial energies can support us in our journey. And I know for myself, going through a divorce, navigating my kids as a single mom, and also a part of my journey, which was when I was really dealing with that whole fear of failure all my life. And I got to
Mm-hmm.
a point where I failed a test. I don't know if I shared that with you, Laurel, but I got to a point in my journey before I launched my business where I thought I was going to be a business development in the finance industry. And I had to be licensed, Series 7 licensing. I passed the
I
first test.
failed my Series 7 test
Oh,
3 times,
oh,
Cheryl.
it's so, oh my God, how crazy is that? Like
Do
somebody
you
like
know
me being, it
this?
doesn't even make sense for people like us, heart centered, to be in, such a dry,
200. It
like,
was the universe saying, girl, you gotta stop with that. That's not it for you. But yes, that test is really hard. And I think that like last time I looked, I mean, it's been 5 or 6 years since I had to take it. I was like, I did a brief stint in corporate trying to like do the American dream business or whatever. Not for me, turns out. But take that test three freaking times. And Cheryl, I failed it twice by 1 point. 2 times in a row, failed it by 1 point twice. I was like, the universe is saying, no, don't even think about it. We are not letting you do that. Like, no, you could do it, but like, no.
oh my
Wow.
gosh, you never told me that. That is, I mean, talk about a freaking sign saying, you know what? I'm going to give you enough to know that you can, but this is not where you're supposed to be. That's the thing, too, for my amazing community. If this resonates with you, like really pause long enough when you are being given, because you probably won't even notice, like a sign and an
Mm-hmm.
opportunity to make a different choice in your life. The problem is that we have so many distractions. We're so caught up in the fucking hustle culture, which I used to be in. I don't believe in that. And yes,
Mm-hmm.
I work a lot because I'm birthing a baby, a business, I'm
A
launching
hundred.
something. So you have to do,
Absolutely.
you got to do that. But it's in the creative, heart centered flow where, not like with our experience of studying for this test, it was draining our spirit and our soul. You know what I mean?
Yep, I
Yeah.
do.
So,
Trust me, I do. So many
no. So,
options for me. Couldn't get my
oh
hand.
my
I couldn't
God, the
get my hand around
options.
options.
Options, dude. I even had a
Freaking
tutor, and
options.
it's like, dude, I did my, like the options chart, like memorizing it.
Yep.
Anyway, yeah. So, I got to the point where I'm like, you know what? Instead of doing like my options chart, because my test was coming up, I'm like, I'm gonna do the 369 manifestation.
Yes.
Pass the test. I will pass the test. But obviously that shit doesn't work because our, body, our belief system is not believing it. Our, like, the words
Correct.
without a match of the emotions, that is not gonna happen. And that's why people say, oh, I can't manifest. I don't even like the word manifestation. Oh, I can't consciously create. Why? It's because it is a mismatch.
And I also think that there's something to say about divine timing too. And I actually meant to say this earlier when you were talking about like everyone is starting to wake up to this shift in consciousness right now. And astrology is a really very loud like chamber for this thought, but like we receive what we're able to receive when we are ready to, when we can, when we got the chops for it. Like that divine timing puts you in the right places with the right people at the right time, because it is then at that moment that you are ready for this lesson. You are ready to receive. You at least have enough of a working knowledge to like get your feet wet into something. And sometimes that can manifest as very challenging experiences that make us doubt ourselves. But that is where like the beauty of astrology from a growth mindset and growth perspective comes in to help us understand that, again, energy is inherently neutral. What we do with it, that is what matters. If we can raise our awareness to make informed, conscientious choices and just understand, like, for example, right now we're recording this podcast and Mercury is presently in retrograde, so we already had a talk beforehand that like there might be things we need to redo or revisit. Hopefully that's not the case here, but we know that is the framework that we're working within. So in a week or two, if Cheryl is like, oh my gosh, it cut out in the middle of this thing, can we re-record that? We're not going to be all in a tizzy about it because we knew, hey, these are some of the risks that are running right now, and we can adjust accordingly. Or we can say, let's circle back to something later. It's this ability to be aware of the conditions instead of just being submerged in them. It's so powerful.
That is so powerful, Laurel. And at the time of this recording, it's April 12th. There's been a lot going on.
Oh, hot dog.
Holy moly. Can you please just talk about what is happening, right now or has been happening, to give us some sort of understanding if we're feeling a little, you know what I'm saying, not ourselves.
Definitely. I definitely would be happy to. And I just want to preface this. I know this is coming out towards like the end of April, the beginning of May. So anyone who's listening, just think back to what was happening at the end of March into mid-April, because this has been basically from like March 25th until April 8th has been one of the hottest spots of the entire year of 2024. So if y'all out there are thinking back to like late March into mid-April and you're like, that was a turbulent, volatile, chaotic, like ups and downs kind of moment, then know that you were living in alignment with the energy, because we just had solar eclipses, the lunar eclipses. It was eclipse season, which is a massive moment in any year. Eclipses happen twice a year, every year, like clockwork, because we live in a gigantic clock. That's all this whole experience is one giant clock, and astrology just lets us know where the hands are moving at any given time. So we had eclipses. We also are presently in the Mercury retrograde that we have had for most of the eclipse season as well. And one of the other toughest astrology points of the year happened on April 10th where I call it red light astrology, where it's like everyone's like engines are revving, but the light hasn't turned green yet. And so you're like hanging out in that like high anticipatory like state, but feels very constricted or limited or blocked in some way. So like to distill this all down, essentially April was and remains the hottest point in the entire year. This is where you can expect there to be, or there probably has been for different people in different ways, a lot of massive change. There's been big endings and big beginnings coinciding, but it has come packed with a punch, almost like a gut punch in a way. Almost the imagery I get when I think about all of these energies, like, because I could spend 3 hours just talking about these three things that I brought up here, but I'm not going to do that. Instead, what I'm going to do is like paint a little bit of a picture here. It's almost like trying to give your kid medicine, but they won't take it. Up and get that spoonful in there. Okay, I know it sucks, but swallow it. It's going to make you feel better, but then maybe they're like grumpy at you. They hate being tickled. How dare you tickle me? Like, I hate that. You did that to trick me. You did that just to kind of force me to take the medicine. I didn't even want to take the medicine. I'd rather be sick. And then a week passes, and thank God they took the medicine, because guess what? They're running around the house again, crazy little wild child, right? Like, that is the kind of vibe that we're energetically moving through right now. But the universe was the one trying to feed us the medicine, and many of us are like, I don't want it. That hurts. That tastes bad. That makes me feel icky, But there is a healing sustenance inside of all this energy, but it really comes from breaking the chains of people pleasing. It comes from breaking the chains of being like, doing things just for the sake, being liked for the sake of being liked, because you don't want to be disruptive, because you want to be nice. This has been like no more Mr. Nice Guy energy. And in its place, there has become an invitation to nut up or shut up, essentially, to like really put the pedal to the metal. It's time for you to pursue yourself, to take actions, to be fearless. And when I say fearless, I don't mean to be unafraid. I mean to like fearlessly go forth despite what might be threatening our safety, threatening our sense of security, threatening the limiting beliefs that we've held in our lives for so long. The energy that we've been experiencing through April, especially through early April, is spark us into action to say, you know what, it's my time to do something. Maybe something for me, maybe something for me for the first time, So there's this like big push towards individuality right now, to autonomy, to mobilize on behalf of a pursuit or an initiative that really compels you to move, to put action, to get like unstuck, essentially. And that has been very, very, very loud lately. Now, to wrap this up, I will say there has been a tone shift by the time people are listening to this episode. We'll be in Taurus season with also some amazing, auspicious, very good energy flowing through. So be on the lookout for unexpectedly good surprises to come through, especially maybe for some of us, this can really shape up around resources. This is a general statement here, so like not everyone's going to become a millionaire tomorrow. I'm so sorry about that, but there does seem to be a big energetic signature. It's what is technically called the Uranus-Jupiter conjunction in Taurus. That's the technical terms, ladies and gentlemen. But essentially, let's boil that down. It is a signal for there to be massive change and breakthroughs around stagnant or limiting belief systems. This could look like, on a global level, a lot of advances in technology, advances in humanitarian aid. We can only hope. But I think on an individual levels, what we can look for is that there's going to be some unexpected growth coming through over the next several months. Now, it's important that all this energy that is congregating right now is the start of something. So we are just now embarking on the beginning of some very, very, very important energy that will span out over specifically like the next 6 months. So if April has come and passed and you're like, Laurel, nothing like crazy big happened here, don't worry, because I bet you in the next few months something will happen that when you look at like, oh, when did you start having those conversations? When did that idea first pop in? April.
That's beautiful. Yes. And, just to piggyback off of that, Laurel, what just download came to me is that since we're speaking, in somewhat of like time stamping, I really encourage our community to start journaling. Today is your
Mm-hmm.
invitation to, if you haven't started journaling, please start journaling of where you're at and reflect back to the time that Laurel just said here, March 25th to April 8th, and take a look at what's been going on there. And the beautiful thing is that we're going to have Laurel back because she is in the house on a monthly basis. And so she'll be able to help us, guide us, and navigate, what's going on, and maybe give us a little glimmer of just what is happening in the cosmos to look forward to, or to
Mm-hmm.
look out for. That way you don't feel like you're going crazy. Because when I worked with Laurel on a personal level, and she enlightened me with her gifts of reading my chart and where I was and what's happening, it not only gave me excitement, but it also helped me gain clarity. And that's what I want you guys to understand here, is that you're at a time right now for divorced women and single moms. It's a very uncertain time. And I myself, I've worked with healers, and so one of them being an astrologer. And when I didn't pass that test, because by the time I took they had broken it down to 3 tests. So I passed the first one,
Mm-hmm.
the second one I failed. And what really prompted me to take a good look, like, am I going to do this again, is because my body was showing signs of so much stress, despair, and unhappiness, that it came out in my face. And I'm not saying this
Mm-hmm.
because I'm being vain. It's because I got these 2 blind pimples back to back, and they
Mm-hmm.
were painful, but not even about what's happening on the outside of my body. It made me
It
pause
was,
what was going on inside. So yeah, so if it was like showing me on an external level what chaos is happening inside, I'm like, my God, I have to wait. I gotta pause, because I'm a single mom. If I'm not here, healthy, vibrant, youthful, optimal, who the hell is going to take care of my kids better than me? Nobody.
mm-hmm.
Nobody. So that's why when your body is not performing in the way that, you feel, it doesn't have to be optimal. You're not about to go run a freaking marathon or what have you, or if you want to, go for it. But if that's not where you're at, take a good look at what your lifestyle is like. And that'll tell you if you need to pause, you need to reflect, and go from there. I just want to interrupt this video real quick to talk about something that is really important and super exciting, which is my upcoming workshop, Biohacking Your Best Life After Divorce. I am going to be teaching you how to heal the hurt, how to get unstuck, how to rediscover your true self, and rebuild a life even better than before. I am going to be using concepts that blends science, spirituality, alternative healing modalities, and a lot of personal experience, because believe me, I have made a lot of mistakes, and I do not need you making the same mistakes, because that's what the workshop is for. So make sure to join me. All of the information is going to be in the show notes for my upcoming workshop, Biohacking Your Best Life After Divorce. The other sign too for me to stop and like reevaluate where my future was going to be in terms of career is that my son saw me studying, and he's like, I never want to do what you do. You look miserable.
Oh,
Holy
that's
shit. That is
telling.
so telling. And I'm
That's
a
really telling.
happy person. So, like, just those 2 things right there, and how I felt, I said I needed to just figure out what my next move is. And I spoke to an astrologer, and also she's a tarot reader, and she actually was the one that plugged me into a heart-centered business when I couldn't even get my mind wrapped up around that, because I come from corporate America, 25 years of experience. And what the hell did I know about a business that's heart-centered, where I'm the face? My story is the healing part of it, obviously my training also, but I resisted for so long. Although the gifts
Mm-hmm.
are inherently within, to put it out there in that way, I was like, I don't know. Like, it took me some time. I prayed, and now here we are.
Well,
And
that's
now,
one of the most beautiful things I think about astrology is that we it is how do I want to say this? Sometimes we're so close to our own shit that that's all we smell. You know, like we're so caught up in our own perception that that's all we can see, that we're so like entrenched in our belief system about ourselves and our energy and our capabilities and our experiences and our personal narratives and origin stories that we keep repeating and repeating and repeating to ourselves. But that's all we see. But the beautiful thing about systems like astrology, like energy reading, like tarot, like channeling, like all of it, is that it gives you, again, this unbiased look at yourself. Like it allows you to see opportunities that you might have passed by, but somebody else who is maybe skilled at interpreting these signals, these symbols, it's an interpretive symbolic language, can be like, oh my gosh, have you ever thought about this thing? Because you got the chops for it energetically. And it's like, no, I would have never thought to do that. And then you start to dig into it and you're like, oh my God, hold on a second. That actually like really hit. That actually really aligns with me. So it allows you to see an entire like catalog of different potentials, different possibilities. One of my favorite things to say when I teach my monthly workshop on astrology, because I do have a monthly crash course, essentially a free 4-day workshop where I teach people the very foundational pieces of how do you even begin interpreting and reading a birth chart and everything. But one of my favorite things that I get to say in there is that there are as many different ways for energy to manifest as there are people who have ever lived, period. Because each person is coming in with their own unique energetic signature. And they're not the same. Not even twins have the exact same birth chart, because one is going to be born at 1 minute and one's going to be born in a few minutes later, right? So it's like they might have to be very close, but they're the subtlest of differences. And that's also where free will comes in. How do you choose to use your energy? Right? But it just goes to show the massive amount of creative potential that exists out there, because anyone who has lived has had a birth chart, whether they knew it or engaged with it ever or not. And however their life turned out for them was a set of manifestations unique to them and unique to their energy and unique to how they co-created with their blueprint, essentially. So when you think about like the vastness of all the potentials there, we're so limitless, but our birth chart just helps us to understand like what our inherent natural lanes can be, so we don't veer off our course, so we don't veer off our path. And that's like one of my favorite ways to use astrology, is because it really helps you gain so much clarity on not only like what am I like, what are my characteristics, but like what is it that motivates you? And when you can get to the bottom of that, you can start making some very intentional decisions. And so I know specifically for your audience, astrology could be such a powerful tool after what for many may feel like a cataclysmic experience, you know? And looking at like, well, what in my chart can help me understand this? What in my natural energetic blueprint can help me understand this? And then how can I use that to not only help me like grow and heal, but also course correct for the future? You know, how do I make better choices in choosing my partner? How do I make better choices in conveying what my needs are? How do I make better choices in doing things for me? What are the things that might help me feel fulfilled in myself and in my life? I know for me, when I found astrology, here we are. I was wondering if we were going to get back to it or not, if we were going to find a natural way back to like how I found astrology, because you asked me at the first, and then I was like, oh, we're not, it's gone now. But no, we found it back. But when I first got into astrology, it was after a breakup. It was my first, I was 21, almost 21. I think it was a few months before my 21st birthday. And I was out of my first significant relationship. We were together for 3 years. It was long distance. Now, granted, it wasn't a marriage, right? But I definitely lost myself in that relationship. I lost myself completely. I didn't know where Laurel started and he ended. And the ironic thing is that we were long distance the whole time. So it was we were long distance the whole time. I still managed to completely dissolve in that relationship and have no clue who I was when it ended. I was broken. I was rejected. I was lost. I was a failure. We had gotten really, really excellent at hurting each other very badly, It became a special skill of ours, you know? And so at that point, I had no clue who I was. But what I did know was my name was Laurel, and I was born April 8th. And God dang it, I always felt like I identified as an Aries. I was like, yeah, Aries, that's right. And so that's when I was like, oh, let me remind myself of like those Aries. They're so bold, they're so brave, they're so courageous, they're so like individualistic, like they're bubbly, they're cheerful, whatever. I was not feeling any of that in my life at all. So I just started reading everything I could about having your sun sign in Aries. And then about a week later, it was very divine timing. About a week later, I met someone who would become my first like spiritual teacher in a sense. They introduced me to like the beginning of my spiritual journey. And they said, oh, Laurel, you like astrology? That's cool. What's your moon sign? And I said, what's a moon sign? And they said, the moon was in a sign too when you were born. You should go home and look it up. Let me know what it is. And I was like, okay. First thing I did when I got home was hit the computer. And that was the rabbit hole I never came out of. Like I went home, I looked up what a moon sign is. I figured out mine was Aquarius, and it provided answers and scaffolding and framework. Like, I already was like, yeah, Aries, that's me. But this added a whole another dimension because the moon represents our emotions. It represents how we are nurtured. It represents how we are cared for, how we care for others, how we receive, how we feel accepted, if we feel accepted. It's the inner soft, gooey self. You know, the moon is very tied up with our inner child as well as our inner mother, that kind of archetype there. So it's a very important planet, needless to say. But once I started to learn like what it means to have your moon in Aquarius, started to unpack that, so many things that I never had previously had words or a framework for suddenly clicked into place. And then it was very shortly after that I was like, oh my God, so that means Mars was somewhere and Venus was somewhere. And I started to just devour anything. And then very, very shortly after that, I was like, holy hell, this can help me understand other people better. This is like a hack. This is like a cheat sheet on like how to engage with other people better. And that's kind of where my journey with it began. But through that process, I'm 33. I turned 33 on April 8th. So I don't know how many years, that 12, 13. So over the course of these 12 or 13 years, what astrology offered me was just this way to know myself and accept myself and to be objective and unbiased and not like hate me, you know, and not feel like, oh, you're such a failure. Oh, you suck at everything. It's like, no. We have our strengths. We have our weaknesses. And I learned through doing my deep dives into astrological work and astrological healing that I wasn't a failure. I just wasn't integrated. You know, I just wasn't assimilating my energy. I just was fighting with myself instead of finding ways to reconcile the frictions that I had within me. And that journey really helped me gain just so much clarity, not just about like, again, my characteristics, but also about like my lived experiences. And so I really feel like astrology is so vital for anyone who is going through any kind of like cataclysmic experience like that, who has felt like they've lost themselves, that does not know how to get back to self. Astrology is the freaking framework. Our birth charts are our blueprints for how, it's our owner's manual, I often call them, you know. It's like, I remember growing up, my mom used to say, you didn't come with a owner's manual, you didn't come with a guidebook, Laurel. And then I found astrology and I was like, bullshit, I didn't. I sure as hell did. No one knew how to read it, but I figured out how to read it. I learned how to read it. And ever since finding astrology, it just offered me so much self-compassion and so much self-awareness. I've transformed my life because of the insights it has given me on understanding like what drives me, what motivates me, and how does that relate to my lived experiences. So I feel like anyone who's just seeking answers, seeking guidance, it's like astrology is everything. Like astrology is like #astrology is life, bro. But it really is, because it contains every aspect of our experience within it. So I'll get off. I'll get off my high horse now. Your turn,
Oh
Cheryl.
no, no, that was actually such a perfect way to, address our audience and my amazing community of divorced women and single moms. Your story there of how you came to, learn and get and never get out of the rabbit hole. You want to stay there. There's rabbit holes that I'm in that I never want to get out of, which is this whole realm. Is that, like they're going through such uncertain times. I know I went through, gosh, super lost like you. I resonate with your story so much. And I know a lot of our listeners will, our viewers. And so I'm so happy that you share that. And I'm so happy how you just illuminated the power of astrology when it comes to gaining a deeper understanding and clarity for that moment in time in your life when everything is in fucking chaos. You don't know right side up from upside down. You don't know, like for me, what paint color I like. You don't know anything basically besides your name. You were born, here, like at this date and time, and that's your birth sign or your zodiac sign. And from there, I think it does such a great, beautiful job when like self-awareness and the beginning of that journey of self-discovery to take a look at what your sign is. Work with Laurel. All of her stuff's going to be linked in the show notes. Like, join her free workshop and anything else that she's doing, follow her. It's all going to be in the show notes because truly for the ones that are, I don't know. It doesn't matter how many years you have been out of your relationship. For me, it took me years to, get to a place to finally realize like, oh, I need to figure out my own answers for myself. Conventional therapy did not work for me. And I have a lot of therapist friends. There's a time and a place for everything, for coaches, for everyone, healers. Personally, I needed more than just the traditional conventional. I needed spiritual wisdom. I needed the science. I needed also a person's personal experience because I don't give a fuck how many degrees you have. If you have never been divorced, if you have never dealt with nearly half as much of life experience and pain as I've been through, how can you tell me that this is the way forward? Yes, books will tell you that. Life experience is a completely different animal. And so
100%.
that's why, yes, I have, developed this beautiful like system and program and framework to where it encompasses all of those things. And in fact, I don't know if I shared this with you, Laurel, but I hired a copywriter for my sales page. And she researched over 20 competitors, but I don't air quotes because I don't believe in competition. It's just ourselves.
There's more than enough abundance for all, baby.
I couldn't agree more. And so she said there's nobody out there putting it together in a pretty bow in the way that this offer is. And I'm going to tell you guys more details on that, so stay tuned. But like I said, this is why the astrology is so beautiful. Utilize it to your leverage advantage. Check out Laurel and you will begin to find your way home, back to yourself.
Exactly what it does. That's exactly what it did for me, at least. And I find that my clients feel very similar because this is like, I won't go too far off on this like train of thought here, but like when you're working with astrology yourself or working with a skilled interpreter, it should not feel like new information. I don't think it should ever feel like it's brand new information. I think it should feel like a remembering, if anything else. You might be like, oh, I didn't know my Venus was in Taurus. And that might be new, like the framework on it, the jargon attached to it. But like when you read it, when you understand it, when you talk about it, when you embody it, that should not feel brand spanking new because it's always been within you. It's always been within you. And it's just up to us how we want to choose to embody and show up to our experiences for good or for ill. Like sometimes they're going to be hard as shit. And that's tough. And like, I will be totally transparent knowing that there's shaky ground ahead or some challenging energy coming in is still very different than the lived experience of it. I lived that during the eclipses just now, where it's like, for months I was like pounding the table on how turbulent this astrology was likely to be experienced as. And then it showed up and I was like, oh my God, it's just as much as I thought it would be. Knowing didn't help it be less, but it helps me to be like, it's okay, hang in there, Laurel. You know when this window ends. It's okay, hang in there, Laurel. You know what the protocol is. You know what the lessons are. You know what we got to keep our eyes peeled for. You know that the temptation to react is very strong right now, and you also know that the signals are to hold at the same time. And it's like that will change your life. Just having that awareness, because then the actual navigation, although still very much a lived experience, you can hold yourself down with your insight, you know?
Hell yeah. That is so freaking key because, like, self awareness and just awareness and how you're showing up and what's going on in the universal energies, I mean, it can have such a quantum shift in your life if you begin to work on it. My gosh, because I've experienced it for myself. I'm sure you have experienced it for yourself. And also when we're not in that space. And here's the thing, like what you were saying, and I love that you said that. It's because we are able to recognize, okay, this is why this is happening, as opposed to just going there and not having any sort of awareness and just like bouncing against the walls, where here it's like, okay, shit, I can pivot and dodge, or you know what, I know it's coming, let me slow it down, let me prep myself, as opposed to it just like massive impact and you don't even know where that shit's coming from. So
exactly.
It's so amazing. It's so amazing, Laurel. I so deeply resonate. And I hope that this insight and like wisdom and input that Laurel is sharing here is, you guys take it as your invitation to explore this amazing, just, I mean, it's a gift. If you if you're not familiar with it, please, start looking it up.
Definitely. And the thing I will say about, like, for anyone who is like completely, maybe they grew up in families that were like, no, astrology is bad or whatever, they just never had an interest or don't think that it's all connected. Well, if you don't think it's all connected, I doubt you're actually listening to this particular podcast. But for anyone who's always been interested but like shy, because there's a lot to it, I will say that, like, again, taking my free workshop is such a good intro, because I am so pleased, because it took me years to hone in on this for myself. I'm so pleased to share that one of my number one pieces of feedback that I receive is that I make this easy to understand. And I know Cheryl and I got a little like jargony there, especially up front, so you're probably like, I don't know what that girl just said. Trust me, it is a goal of mine. It's like part of my mission to make this stuff attainable and digestible as much as humanly possible, and to not gatekeep this study that can help us so tremendously in building a more united relationship with each other, with ourselves, with our experience of being interactive co-creators in this universe. Just, I often like sometimes just like stop and ponder and think about, like, man, my life changed so much when I started to live in alignment with my cosmic energy. Cheryl, I know your life changed so much when you started to live in alignment with your energy. And then think about the gifts that I've been able to cultivate with my business. Think about the gifts you're cultivating with yours. It's like, imagine if more folks were living in that space of alignment where they're not fighting their energy. Instead, they're growing with it. They're cultivating it. They're trimming it. They're honing it. Imagine how much good and beauty and like unity there could be in the world if everyone's pouring from a full cup because they're living in alignment with their energy. It's just like mind-boggling.
Honestly, that's like a breath of fresh air. And as you were talking, I can just feel it in my, heart chakra, just piercing directly, because what people don't understand, that's why I'm so passionate about, changing the narrative for my community of divorced women and single moms, that there is so much more to life than where you're at. I understand, believe me firsthand, how painful and chaotic it is at this moment in time. But if you could just get so involved in the possibility of what it could be, that can be your beginning, as opposed to talking about the past, which is done, and also reinforcing all the issues. Start from where you're at, get to a level of acceptance, get to a level of shit. If you can surrender, that might be too much, because I couldn't do that till way later, but at least accept where you are. It takes time. And, work with Laurel, work with astrology. And I promise you, having that is going to profoundly just even shift how you perceive yourself, how you perceive the world. And from there, that's so within or as above, so below, like all of that is going to come into alignment, and you're going to be shocked at what 6 months could look like after doing this, what a freaking year could look like after doing this. And I just want to say real quick, like I was talking to my boyfriend about this yesterday, that once I tapped into the alignment, once I realized how to consciously create, which I teach my clients, not guessing like one-offs, like how did I bring this into my reality? I was just getting featured. I shouldn't say just, but I was getting featured in local magazines. Within 4 months, what I've been able to accomplish just in social proof and, opportunities coming my way, it would literally take someone 5 to 7 years. So I went from a local, paper, just in one aspect for social proof. And then I was in Forbes. 4 months. I was deathly afraid of being on video. 4 months from being in the fucking Forbes. Like, how does that happen? As much as I know how it works, it's shocking. So that's why I'm not trying to impress you. I'm trying to impress upon you the power of being in alignment. And so I hope you guys really just take all of this in, all the wisdom that Laurel has shared here. And with that, we're going to start to wrap it up. And before we close, Laurel, I love asking all my guests 2 questions. And me loving metaphysics and all of that. If you were in a time machine, what is the one thing you would do differently if you could go back?
I thought about this question a lot. Because, like, in my personal philosophies, which are obviously very inspired by the cosmic clock we live in, I've often thought about, like, oh, no, very much everything does happen for a reason and blah, 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 and everything as it's intended to be. Okay, so but now that that's out of the way, I would have majored in psychology in college. I'm grateful for my very scenic route that got me to start my own business, but that was a very hard journey for me. And I think that ultimately so much of what I do, and I am not a licensed mental health professional, and I know I could go be one, like I could go get the certs for that, no problem. But a lot of what I do is very akin to therapeutic healing work. And so there is a large part of me that says that, like, if we could go back in time and change one thing, that I would have just been like, hey, you actually should major in psychology, because that might give me a little more, like, I don't really feel like I need the street cred so much these days, but like certainly when I was like in the development stages, like street cred on like, no, I have other things to back up astrology. Like if anything, I would have majored in psych so I could be an astrologer with a background in psych. You know what I mean? So that would be one thing I would change. And then the only other thing that I thought really hard about, like what would I change? I would have told myself to invest in Bitcoin like a lot.
You and me both, dang,
Girl, I like look at those numbers, I'm like,
oh my God. And you know what? I'm glad you said this, because here's what astrology is not. It is not a crystal ball.
It is not.
No, so let's just say that real quick here. And it is not a crystal ball. It is a guide that you cannot use. Okay. So it's not going to tell you what the freaking, lottery numbers are. So please don't get it twisted. Just know
it's a literal map. It's like you lay out a map and you know roughly where you are and where you're going and what the roads are that you might take, but you don't see the car broken down on the side of the road. You don't see like the deer that runs out in front of the highway, you don't see the like beautiful sunset on the horizon of the road. You just see the map. You just see the route there. You have to go live your life to experience the astrology. I mean, it's a very heady and cerebral thing. That's why Aquarians love it, but it is not a substitute for living your life and being humbled, being surprised by the universe. I mean, one of the biggest tenets of like how I feel like when I know I'm in my manifestation lane is that what I wanted to happen happens, but how it happens, the shapes that it takes, the packages it comes in is so shocking and so humbling and so surprising. And I'm like, man, that's exactly what I asked for. And who would have thought it'd come through this way? You know what I mean? So it's like,
Yes.
there is I love living that level of like quantum surprise. You know, you can reach into the energy field, you know what the field is, but what you pull out is going to hit your marks, but you'll be like, wow, can't believe it came through like that. Crazy.
Isn't that amazing? And it could also be the other way. You're asking for growth. Well, you're going to have the worst, might feel at the time, experience with, let's say, a relationship. Well, that's going to wake you the fuck up to be in that beautiful relationship. So be careful what you ask for, you know, in terms of how it comes in, because it's not going to be in a pretty bow sometimes. But the universe is amazing. It'll give you even better than how you thought it was going to come in. Did I think 4 months in what a normal person would do in 5 to 7 years in their business? You know, we don't know. So, you know, just be prepared for that. And I love this. So last one, Laurel, while you're in that time machine, if, you know, going back, what's like the one thing you could tell your younger self?
You know, it's like, I think I've thought about this a bunch too. And I think that I would probably like keep it pretty simple and tell myself to just trust the process. Like, just trust the process. Like, trust that we're going to learn how to take care of ourselves. Trust that it will not always be like this, you know, that, you know, just that, like, what makes you weird is what makes you so cool and so special. And that one day people will listen to you.
Oh, I so love that. And yes, you know, we're all weird in some way, some quirks, you know, and so that's what makes you so beautiful. Whoever needs to hear this, and if you just feel like don't resonate with anyone, or, you know, like you just don't feel like you belong with wherever you're at, just know that whatever makes you different and weird is your biggest gift. That's what makes you beautiful. And so honor yourself and honor that. And I just want to thank you, Laurel, one more time again, because I'm so grateful for you, my friend. Thank you for being here and for shedding your light and your beauty and wisdom. And again, just tell us one more time what you're working on, how people can find you, and, you know, anything else that you'd like to promote.
Absolutely. Thank you. And before I do, just thank you so much. Like, from the moment, y'all, you don't even know, from the moment Cheryl and I like laid eyes upon each other across the Zoom screen, we were like, hello, old buddy, old pal, good friend. I've known you forever. So it is just such a blessing to be along for the ride of your growth. Because I remember that first time we met and I was like, girl, you are going places. It's written all over the chart. It's written all over your energy. We're going to ride it all over them.
Holla!
But seriously, like, I think that when someone shows up to their life the way that you show up to your life, success is inevitable, you know, in all realms, relational, financial, like career, whatever it might be. I just think that the universe responds really well to the embodiment that we're already placing out there. So just thank you so much for having me. It's been so fabulous. And if anyone is interested in exploring astrology, maybe getting their feet a little bit wet, I do host a monthly workshop called Cosmic Quest, Learning Astrology for Self-Alignment and Development. It is a 4-day workshop. I host the second Monday of every month, and, you know, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. And it's just a really great crash course It's a really great beginner's course on astrology and just introducing you to the different players that are in the birth chart and the framework to think about how all these different things work together, because it's a nuanced and complicated study, but once you see it, you cannot unsee it. That's one of the cool things about astrology. So you can join me for that workshop, which you can sign up for on my website, www.attunedalignment.com. I also have one-off readings if you want to actually skip the learning astrology and go straight to the benefiting from astrology parts. I got you on that. And I also have coaching and mentorship programs if you're looking for long-term supported, stable growth using your birth chart as the blueprint to help guide us into alignment so you can start maximizing your potential by working with your energy instead of fighting against it.
Oh, that's amazing. That's amazing. And just guys, just want you to know that I have worked on a personal level with Laurel on my astrology, and she's also my coach. So, it's just very, very invaluable, like having those key pieces together. I mean, and if you don't have to take my word for it, I mean, catch her workshop. She gives you so much, man. 4 days. Like, who does that? So
it is honestly entirely too much. But like, again, it goes back to this idea of like, I don't want this to be gatekept. I don't want this to be challenging for people to even engage with or be exposed to, So like, I do give a lot of information in the workshop, but I do it because I feel like my relationship with astrology is so special. I feel like I'm like a little not a gatekeeper. I'm like an anti-gatekeeper. I'm like a sentinel. You know what I mean? It's like I want to pass the torch along. It's like I want to make sure that this shit like lives on with the right understanding and respect for the study. So I do love being able to expose people to it. Even though it can be a big ask to be like, okay, you ready for 4 days of nonstop learning?
Right, I am. I freaking love it. And that's the great thing too, is that there's going to be more. They might think that, 4 days, this is all I'm going to need and then I'll run with it. No, it doesn't work that way. I mean, put yourself in, that's happened to me too. I'm always constantly investing in myself, my personal development, and in my business. But there's times where it's like, okay, my budget there is tapped out. I have invested in high ticket stuff. Let me see what I can learn here to save some money for the next time I have the budget again for it. And it's not enough. So I find myself like, nope, I can't like piece all the puzzles together. I need in depth. And that's what, Laurel's workshop is. You're going to get so much, but yet there's still going to be more. So,
there's so much more. It's so funny. I've been running this workshop for over a year now. And when I first started, it was 5 days, 1 hour a day. Then as it evolved, it turned to 4 days, 2 hours a day. And that's how, like, it's an 8-hour workshop experience. And we still go over sometimes because there's so much. Like, you can't even scratch the surface of the iceberg in 8 hours on astrology, but you can at least formulate an understanding and a concept and a workable framework for how to dig deeper, for how to build upon the foundation. And ultimately, that's what the goal of the workshop is to help you build that foundation. And then with coaching, we like go in deep personally on your blueprint. And those sessions, I meet with those clients for 2 hours at a time as well. And we often are like, oh my gosh, the timer's up. Can you believe it's already been 2 hours? Because there's just an endless amount of depth of wealth. And it's not just astrology. It's like what the astrology brings up for us to unpackage together,
Yeah.
And so it's just beautiful. I just love it so much. I feel so blessed to have like taken this risk and share my passion with the world, because now I get to help people and hyperfixate on my favorite thing all day long.
Isn't that beautiful? I'm so grateful. And, I'm so grateful that you did go through all of the different, just, life stages, life routes, and led you here, because we need your gifts for sure. And I'm so grateful to you again. Thank you for being here on It Gets Better From Here, Laurel, and for being our in-house, cosmic coach. Thank you. And I'll see you again very, very soon.
Thank you so much. Bye, y'all.
If you are not yet a subscriber, please hit that subscribe button. That way you never miss an episode like this one. And also check the show notes for information on my free upcoming workshop, Biohacking Your Best Life After Divorce. Thank you.